So some examples of these manipulated substances.
Somebody's playing a recording. I recognize my own voice. All right, guys, good afternoon. We're going to give it one more minute, see who else jumps on. Just so you guys are kind of already moving that way, we are going to be using a lot of the lecture material from last week about plants. So if you guys want to pull that stuff up, you can, or pull your notes out, that type of thing. So that's going to be our focus today. There we are. I knew there was one more coming. All right, guys. Well, as always, I would like to start out just kind of seeing how we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and open this poll and just let me know where you're at. All righty. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. So, oh boy, there's still a large percent of people that can't get a handle on anything. I feel you. I cannot get a handle on anything in life right now. So, much less my classes. So, keep hammering away. And to those of you guys that are getting time management down and doing better than previous weeks, fantastic. Congratulations. Tell us your secrets is what this comes down to. So just in general, do you guys have anything to share? Is everything going okay? Are you in the middle of midterms? What's going on? Nobody wants to talk. Fantastic. This is going to be a long day. Long day. Couple of exams. Okay. Good deal.
I feel like I was doing well at first and things were going pretty good and I'm kind of getting a handle on time management. And one of my professors decided to give exams every single week. So now I have an exam every single week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm making it work.
Yeah, gosh. It's just a challenge all the way around, per the usual. Here's the good news is that if we make it through the end of if we make it through the end of this week, technically we're halfway through the semester. Because the last week, week 16, is just finals week. So But if you really make it through the end of next week, then you've truly made it halfway through the semester. So I think I shared this on Monday with a couple classes. Like, I feel like this semester is crawling and going at Mach 10 all at the same time. It totally depends on what we're dealing with. So, all right, cool. Well, Julie, did you want to share something?
I was just saying that was like the best description of this semester.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it, because it's like, it does feel like it's crawling and there's never going to be an end in sight. But at the same time, I'm like, where did the last 7 weeks actually go? So craziness. All right. Well, thank you guys for kind of chiming in and sharing. We are gonna keep working on the grazing management plan this week, but before we get there, I just want to go through Blackboard, let you know what's going on this week to make sure everybody's on the same page. If I can get back to it. All right, so we are officially in week 7. And so this week is a light week, no new material outside of 2 peer-reviewed publications. And so you guys have access to one of those publications that's in a browser. It's just on a website. And the reason that I left it in the website and didn't give it to you in PDF is because the PDF version doesn't have all the really pretty colorful pictures. So this first link here is a link to Cooperative Extension site, which they took all the information here out of their manuscript. And so they have some really, really good images here. And so your goal here is to work through this website, as well as this manuscript, which is all about residual dry matter. And residual dry matter, or RDM, is really a central management component out here on the West Coast. So the rest of the country really manages, the rest of the country outside of the Mediterranean climate and annual grasslands manages grazing pressure and distribution with stocking rate, which we're also going to learn. But out here in California, we tend to manage based on residual dry matter and not stocking rate. And so those 2 things are related, and we're going to talk through how they're related. But I wanted you guys to get a good scientific background about residual dry matter and why we use it out here compared to solely using stocking rate. All right, so the goal with these 2 manuscripts is to answer all of these questions that are attached to this assignment here. And it just pops up as a Word document, and I got to reshare. And there's a whole bunch of questions on here about it, so that you just need to go through and answer. And so this is going to be due by 5 p.m. this Friday. And it's going to really just expand your knowledge to what we've already been learning about with the plant stuff. So, and it's going to confirm your knowledge from what you read, the first peer-reviewed journal article you read with Mediterranean climate from Mel George as well. So this is just a good review and a good way to learn about vegetation in our ecosystem. All right, so is everybody okay with what's due on Friday?
Good question.
Yeah.
So for that paper that we have to fill in with the answers, of course, is that 2 or 3 readings? I was confused on that.
It's all the information really is in those 2 readings, but you've already been through the Mediterranean climate manuscript from week 1 or week 2. And so that one is probably fresher in your mind. So you can use their information from that as well. Okay. And I think there's one question that actually references it, but that information is also included in that first link as well. So, Anyway, so no quiz this week, just the assignment, okay? And so that was an intentional move to not introduce you guys to new material this week because this plant thing is really big. And so that's why we're going to spend quite a bit of time on it today. All right.
Question?
Is the soil analysis due for the management project on Friday as well?
No. So thank you, Julie, for bringing that up. And I will put this in this week's email, but I'm going to do the next spot check, which is all the soil stuff and the vegetation stuff that we're going to work on today. Let's have that due October 30th.
Okay.
So Friday, October 30th, you just need to have all that information into your Google document. You guys have already shared them with me. I will just go in and look at what you've added, okay? So, and if you haven't shared it with me yet, you should. And this one will probably be worth more points. So I think the last one was worth 15. And this one will probably be worth double that because it's a lot of information. Okay, so so keep working on the soil stuff. The recording is under the week 5 folder is where we did the web soil survey and the edit website description. And so if you need to go back and review it, you can. And then today we are going to start talking about all the vegetation stuff. And so we are recording. Okay. So yeah, so I'll get this one put up. It'll probably be tomorrow before it gets put up because it takes forever to load.
So you won't be checking Google Docs this week, right?
No, not checking Google Docs this week.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Yep. I am still struggling with 490, Myra.
Yeah, I haven't really updated mine, so I'm just like, if she goes in there and expects to see something, it's probably not gonna be there.
Nope, I'm not gonna check Google Documents, guys, until October 30th.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Awesome. Okay, other questions about due dates this week or where we're headed?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, Claire, go ahead.
Is it okay if I submit? I mean, I've been working on the pre-review articles today, and
Yeah.
they're not that bad. The questions are not that bad. It's pretty straightforward. I just am concerned because the due date is Friday at 5 p.m. Is it okay if I submit it like an hour late or so? Just because I get off of work at 6:30.
Yeah, that's fine. I may just take off like 10% or something for just being late. So
Okay.
I won't hammer you the half points. But I also don't want to penalize people that get it in on time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen and pull up the grazing management plan so we can get into what we're going to work on today. Okay. So underneath that grazing management plan, in the original assignment, I'm going to bring that up and apparently reshare because Zoom is dumb. Okay. Oh, come on, dude. Not that one. That one. Okay, so this is that big assignment that we've been working through. We've already handled short and long-term goals. And then we have really got a pretty good handle on Land resources, that's where we use the Google Earth app to kind of put in the fence borders and that type of thing. We're going to keep adding to that map over the next few weeks. And then we started talking about soils pretty in depth the last 2 weeks. And so we've started part B here, but we've really covered a lot of what is going to be due in part C as well through using Web Soil Survey and the Edit app. And so that is where we're at. We're going to go back and grab geology, climate. You should have a good idea on. We've already been through the climate lecture. That's something that you guys can pull information out of the lecture on. And hydrology, don't worry about too much right now, because we are going to do an entire week with a guest speaker, hopefully, about rangeland water quality and what the hydrologic cycle looks like. And so where we are at today, what we're going to concentrate on today is part D, which is vegetation and habitat type. We're going to briefly mention invasive species, but we're going to come back probably not next week, but the week after, and have an entire day dedicated to managing invasive species. So identifying and managing invasive species, because there are some that are pretty prolific in that Daughtry Hill property. So what we are working on today is vegetation and habitat type. And so this is not necessarily going to be me teaching you stuff, because you guys have already been through it with the lectures from last week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually push you guys to breakout rooms and give you the goal to identify the type of plants that are going to be on this Daughtry Hill unit, some of the species, if they're going to be have any forage value associated with them, what their growth characteristics or their phenology is like. And so that means like their growing season, what does it look like? And then we're gonna talk very specifically about some specific species that we see on this property. All right, but what I want you guys to do is to be able to kind of pull this together. So let me do this really quickly. So let's see here. All right, so we're going to do this in a series of breakout rooms. So I'm going to push you guys to breakout rooms for probably 20 minutes to work on this first goal. And I'm going to put it in the chat so y'all have it. Okay, so you guys are going to work on identifying or listing out the types and the functional group of plants that are on rangeland. So that's the first thing. So cool season, warm season grasses, grass-like species, forbs, shrubs, rangeland plants, all those things may or may not exist on the DMU. So that is the first task, is to try to figure out what types of rangeland plants actually exist on this property. Okay, and then, and so you can use all information that you have in front of you. So if you guys need to pull up your lectures, if you haven't done that already, you can do that. If you need to pull up those 2 manuscripts that you are reading through this week, pull those up. That has a lot of good information in it as well. Okay, if you need to pull up the Mediterranean climate lecture, or the physical characteristics lecture, or the Mediterranean climate peer-reviewed journal from Mel George that we reviewed in the first week, that is a good one to start this process as well. And so we want to make sure that we have a good list of the types and the functional group of plants that exist on this Daughtry Hill unit. Okay, so that is our first goal. Is everybody good with that? Just give me a thumbs up or a nod if I can see you. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give you guys 20 minutes to do this, because it takes a little bit of time to pull that information together. I'll bounce around as much as I can to breakout rooms. And then if you guys need help or you have questions, just use the ask for help thing in your breakout room. All right. And then if you get done early, feel free to keep working on some of those things that it was listed out in that grazing management plan. So the next step that we're actually headed into is identification of species, I think. Let me look at my lesson plan. Oh no, next, yeah, so the next thing that we're headed into is seasonality. So what does their growth cycle look like? So that's something that you can start on if you get through the functional types and still have time left in your breakout room. All right, so let me get these situated. So we've got 22. All right, so the rooms are open. If you guys would accept those and head to your rooms, that would be great.
Dang it, Casey, I think I missed the boat on accepting it.
Oh, just, did you have something pop up on your screen?
Yeah, I got it. I found it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yep. There we go. Started again. Thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and kind of share what you guys talked about. So to do that, as we keep a running list, I'm going to actually type it into a PowerPoint slide so we at least have, you guys are able to see what we're talking about. So, but this is where I need you guys to actually chime in and share. Okay. So I am going to ask you some specific questions, starting with, what types of plants do you think from your research is found on the Daughtry Hill unit? So somebody give me one.
Annual grasses.
Annual grasses. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off of that really quickly and just do grasses and do a subcategory of annual. Okay. And then did anybody feel like from their reading that there were perennial grasses in that area? Okay. There's a couple nodding heads. So I'll go ahead and put perennials in here. All right, cool. So what is a second type of rangeland plants found on the management unit?
Shrubs.
Shrubs. Cool. All right. And what about a third?
Forbs.
Forbs. What is a forb?
Like clover.
Okay, light clover is good. That's a species. Okay,
Herbaceous
so
plant.
what?
Herbaceous plants.
It is an herbaceous plant. Okay, so what does that mean, Myra?
It doesn't have any woody stem and it produces a flower within a year.
Correct. Yeah. So anything with a showy flower is a forb. And so California is known for massive amounts of forbs on annual rangeland. So if you guys had ever been up to like Table Mountain in Butte County during the spring, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. There's probably thousands of species of wildflowers up there. And they're all forbs. So forbs are a really, really big component to the vegetation that's going to be available in annual grass rangeland. So we're going to talk more about forbs as we go through the semester. I know most of our discussion has really been around grasses to this point. All right, so what is there a fourth category of plants that you think might be in there?
Grass-like.
Okay, and where do you think we would see the grass-like plants? Any ideas?
Maybe like closer to the bank because of the more guaranteed water.
Yep, they will definitely be in riparian areas. So around stock ponds, around the drainages, around the tributary that's coming out of the dam at the head of the lake of Collins Lake. So there will probably be some grass-like species there. Without going out there and seeing a survey of it, I couldn't tell you for sure, but my gut feeling is that there's some low elevation areas that are pretty flat, so they're going to flood, and so that tells me that there will probably be grass-like species around. All right, cool. So as long as you have those 4 types of rangeland plants, that's what we were hunting for, right? So there's going to be 2 major types of grasses there, annuals and perennials. Okay, we're going to circle back around and talk about those here in just a few minutes. There's shrubs for sure, and there's forbs for sure, and probably a few grass-like plants. All right, so let me back out of this really quickly. Oh, somebody wants in. There we go. All right, so that was what we were wanting to get through in that breakout session, okay? And so I know some of you, when I bounced in, you guys had done a good job of that. And so the next thing that we're going to continue to work on is the phenology of it. Okay, so phenology refers to like the seasonality or the growth patterns of the plants. Okay, so when you think about grasses like annual grasses and perennial grasses, they're going to have 2 different types of growth cycles. And the reason that this is important to get down is because we want to build a calendar of when vegetation is available, right? That's when we want to graze it. All right, so as my challenge for you in this next breakout session, again, I'll give you guys 20 minutes to do it, is to work on the phenology, okay? So one way to kind of think through this is start with every type of grass or every type of plant on rangeland. So with grasses, and you can do subcategories. So annual grasses, when are they going to germinate? When are they going to be in their vegetative state, meaning that they're growing, they're adding vegetative mass to them? When are they going to be in their reproductive state? When they're dropping seed, okay? And when are they going to be dead? All right, so, and then on perennial grasses, when is germination going to take place? When is their vegetative stage? When are they going to be actively growing? And then when are they going to go dormant, right? And then shrubs, very similar to perennial grasses. Okay, so they're going to go through active growth and they're going to go through dormancy. And then our grass-like species are going to be very similar to our grasses in the fact that they're going to go through germination, vegetative stage, reproductive, and then death as well. So if you guys can work with the lecture material that you have from a couple weeks ago, I would straight up like get a piece of paper and write January through December on it, and then go through and start marking each category when they're going to be germinating, when they're going to be growing or in their vegetative state, when they're going to be in their reproductive state, and when they're going to be dead or dormant. Okay. So for all 4 plant types. Okay. So we're trying to create a calendar for this to happen. All right, so is everybody good with that charge? Just give me a thumbs up or shake your head if you've got your video on.
Are you gonna throw this up in the chat too, also like we did the last time?
Yep, I can.
That
I
would be
just
great.
gave you way more detail than I put in my thing.
It's okay.
Okay, there you go. Season out. Oh, sorry, that was just to Esmeralda. There we go. Seasonality or phenology. So in the plant world, we call this phenology. Okay, so what does the growth cycle look like? Put it on a calendar. All right, so I'm going to kick you guys back into your breakout rooms. And I'll bounce around as much as I can as well. All right, so and if you need help, just send the little I need help reminder thing and I will come to you. All righty, here we go. If you guys will accept those again, that would be great. Myra, what room were you in? Do you remember who you were with?
Yeah, I was in room 5.
Okay.
Kind of like, I don't know. It just is, I'm on my phone, so it kind of just took me out.
Not a problem. So here you go. Okay. Mary, did you see the request pop back up?
They're also winter annuals. Okay, and then for our perennial grasses, let's see.
That one's like the 2-year one.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, so how do you think we should write this one? You think?
You guys are quiet. You got it figured out?
Yeah, we were just
Working
writing
hard.
our summer and winter annuals.
Okay, cool.
We're not doing types yet, just the seasons.
Type. What do you mean?
Yeah, seasonality.
Oh, right.
Oh no, we're good. We're good. I figured it out.
Okay. So recording. There we go. Now we are. Good call. All right. So perennial grasses. So what's our life cycle start to look like? Where do you want to start?
When they germinate.
Okay. So a new baby plant is going to germinate when?
The spring.
Okay. I would buy that. Care to put a month on it?
Like April, May,
Okay.
March, April, May.
Alrighty. Cool. What happens after germination?
They flower.
Okay.
Vegetation and flower, of course.
Yep. Vegetative state, and they're going to flower. Okay. That inflorescence is going to get big. So when does that happen?
In the summer.
Yeah. So
So June through, I guess, maybe even August, depending on the year, I guess, maybe if it's a real dry year or wet.
yeah, it can happen in August if you're at higher elevations for sure.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
So, question. What was the elevation at the Dr. Hill site again? Was it 3,800? If that it was 36, 35, 32, somewhere in there.
Oh no, I don't think it's that high.
Oh.
Well, I'll have to look it back up. That may have been acreage. Acreage was like 5,000.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, that was acreage. Yes.
So I'll have to look it back up. It's probably 1,500 to 2,000 feet, somewhere in there. That's my
Okay.
guess. Well, yeah, that's a good point. We'll look that back up on Google Earth, or it's probably in Web Soil Survey too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, okay, cool. So vegetative growth, flowering, that's all going to happen during the summer. Okay, so what's the next stage?
Produces a seed.
Okay, it's going to produce the seed. Okay, so do you agree that that happens kind of in September-ish?
Yeah,
probably see it
September, I
happen in August as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll do it. If it were at really high elevations, it'll do it in October, but it's probably going to be a short time frame. Okay. And then what happens after it produces its seed?
It goes dormant.
Yeah, dormant. So when does that happen?
Probably like October, November.
Yep.
And maybe December.
Wouldn't it be maybe like the first frost as well? Could also trigger that dormancy in the plant.
It could. Yep. So it all has to do with soil temperature and when it drops its seed. So cool. Okay, so let's talk about forage quality. Okay. And so we're gonna keep talking about perennial grasses, but this is an important discussion. So when it comes to perennials, their phenology is completely different than annual grasses, right? So, but they're also a different type of plant. So they're going to have broader leaves. They're going to have really big inflorescence at the top that are going to seed out. They tend to be bunch grasses. So they're going to grow in a big bunch together. That means they have a strong root system that is going to go fairly deep. There are perennial grasses in the tall grass prairie in Oklahoma that have roots that go down 9 feet into the soil. It's craziness. I don't think ours go that far here. And some of our most notable perennial grasses are things like the state grass of California, the purple needle grass that you guys need to know. It's going to win you money on Jeopardy at some point in time. Okay. And harding grass are probably the big ones that we're going to see up there. So when those perennial grasses are actively growing and they're going through the germination process, the way that they're going to go through the reproductive process, remember, is they're going to either send out stolons or they're going to send out rhizomes. So either above the soil or below the soil. And so that's how they actually propagate themselves, is through more often than not stoloniferous or rhizomatic propagation. And so they will still seed out, okay, but you're actually going to see more vegetative growth because of the propagation factors rather than the actual seed. And so we have to be really careful with perennials because we want them back on rangeland. There's actually a lot of history and a lot of internal fighting among botanists and range scientists and everything else, that the big mega fauna grazers that were present on the continent many centuries ago actually grazed so hard it changed the ecology from a perennial grassland to an annual grassland. And so there is some controversy out there that cattle and our grazing animals are actually contributing to that change and preventing the native plants from coming back. And so perennial grasses are very much considered native plants here in California. But annual grasses typically are referred to as invasives. Even if they have good forage value, they may still be referred to as invasives. And so the argument between annual grasses and perennial grasses is like the feud between the Hatfield and the McCoys in the range science world in California. So it's important to know that each plant has its place and each plant actually offers vegetative value or forage value to the grazing animal. So on that note, let's talk about when perennial grasses would have the most forage value for an animal. When do you think that would be?
Would it be June through August, maybe?
Why do you say that, Chloe?
Just going off of like similarly, the annual grasses have the most value when they're flowering or when they're vegetating.
Yep.
I figured it would be similar.
It is similar. Okay, so when the plant is actively growing and actively going through photosynthesis and actively creating starches and sugars is when it has the most forage value. And we're going to dive into this more deeply when we get to the animal section, but I just want you guys to have some reference for why we're actually looking at this. So we can graze perennial grasses when they are going through the vegetative growth and flowering stage. But the problem with it is that if we graze them too hard and we actually remove a lot of that photosynthetic area in an area that we're trying to get perennial grasses reestablished in, we basically shoot ourselves in the foot because we aren't going to get those perennial grasses to actually come back in and establish themselves. And so with the perennial grasses, we typically recommend that grazing take place during the dormant season for those guys. All right. And the reason for that is because we like dormant grazing so that the plant has the full ability to recover when it is actively growing. But we also have to manage it very carefully so that we don't take all of the photosynthetic material during the dormant period and basically graze that plant down to nothing, because then it can't recover and it'll die. And so if you get to managing cattle or managing grazers in the Great Basin, sagebrush steppe area, the high desert area, anywhere where there's dominant perennial grasses, they're going to recommend grazing those grasses during the dormant season. And so this is why we see winter permitting and winter allotments in areas like Eastern Oregon and Nevada, where they'll actually turn cattle out in December and January for grazing. And then they bring cattle back in by about June 1st. So it's kind of the opposite scenario depending on what ecosystem you're in. Because we're in an annual grass ecosystem when we're trying to reestablish perennial grasses, because they do a lot of good things. They help filter nutrients in riparian areas. They help with tying topsoil down so they can actually add a lot of nutrients back into the soil. And they're decent. They aren't great nutritive value. They have more energy than they have protein. So we have to be careful when we graze perennial grasses. And so the more forage value they have is during their vegetative growth and flowering time, but that's not necessarily the best time to graze them. So just keep that in mind. So here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the dormant times here as well. It's not going to do it. Okay. In just a different color, because these are all going to be things that we need to take into consideration when we build grazing plans for the unit. Okay, so does everybody follow that logic? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Awesome. All right, so what about our grass-like plants? What do you think? Keep in mind that there's not going to be a lot of them, okay? But what is their growth cycle or the phenology cycle most similar to?
Would it be similar to the perennials?
Yeah, it'll be similar to the perennials. Until you get into higher elevation, then it shifts a little bit. Also, our grazing animals don't really like to eat them. They're pretty coarse. I really don't like them because they have the triangle stem, and some species in the sedges and the rushes with that triangle stem actually is so sharp. Like I get like almost paper cuts when I do vegetation collection stuff. So our grass-like plants, we're not going to talk about too much because they don't really add a whole lot of value to the animal's diet. All right, so let's talk about forbs. What do you guys know about forbs?
The same concept as the perennials, correct?
So
Or similar?
actually, no.
Oh,
They're
okay.
similar to something that we've already talked about, but not necessarily the perennials.
They're similar to annuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, but it's a much shorter timeline. So our annual or our annual forbs, and maybe this will help if I just put annual forbs here. We will actually start to see like germination really come on in when it starts warming up. So like February, March, and April. All right. So the vegetative growth is going to be basically at the same time because the annual grasses growth cycle it goes through the same steps. So it goes through germination, vegetative, reproductive, death, but it's all within a really condensed time frame. Okay, so we're going to see vegetation most likely happen. I don't really see it very often on rangeland in February. It's most typically going to be in March and April and the beginning of May. Okay, and then how do forbs reproduce? How do they propagate themselves? What do you think? How do forbs reproduce? Anybody want to guess?
Through the roots, right?
No, not necessarily. Good guess though. So most of the forbs, or a few of the forbs, not most of them, that we see in California are going to be legumes. So like clover is a big legume. So they're going to fix nitrogen. So that's what the roots are going to concentrate on. They don't necessarily propagate. Okay, but think of clover because that's a big one. Subterranean clover is a big forb on California rangelands. So how would what, Kylie?
Seeding?
Oh,
Like they seed
seeding?
out?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so when are we going to see them seed out?
Probably like, I don't know, between May and July or August.
Yeah, even if for this property, it's probably even going to be April, May, and the beginning of June. Okay, so we'll actually, you know what, April and May. So we'll do the repro state for April and May. All right, and then what happens after the reproductive state? Any guesses?
it has to die. I mean, if it's already done, all the 3 stages, now it has to die. I would believe.
You would believe correctly. All right, so then it's just dead. All right, so do you guys see how the annual forbs, has the same cycle as the grasses, but the timeline is super condensed. So same question that we've been asking at the end of all this. When does annual forbs offer the most forage value to a grazing animal?
Spring through early summer, very early summer.
Okay. So
Well,
you want to put some months on that, Mike?
Yeah, so honestly, actually, scratch the whole early summer. I mean, well, I guess I don't know, May. So pretty much like the very end of March, kind of like, because we're still in the germination stage. It's somewhat in March, so it'd be like the second half of March through maybe through May, depending on the plants and such.
Okay, I would buy through May, just because the Daughtry unit is going to be at, it's supposed to be orange, right? Is at a little bit of a higher elevation,
Right.
So it will actually hang on a little bit longer than it would if we were in the valley, truly in the valley. All right, cool. So let's talk about shrubs. Okay, and then we'll bring all this together. So shrubs are going to be most like what?
Perennials.
Like perennials, yeah. Okay, so we're just going to copy this over. And so we're going to see dormancy occur during the fall and the winter. Then we'll see, germination again, germination or the active vegetative state, right? So not every plant, every shrub is only going to germinate once. Does that make sense? So it's not going to germinate every year. And so we can actually see these plants come into the vegetative state in early spring as well. And so one way to kind of think about this is, if you guys get, outside and go hiking and that type of stuff, is when do you see the leaves start to grow back on the oaks? Okay, so that is a good indication of the vegetative state. And so usually that here in the valley is going to be fairly early, like February. But if we go up in that Daughtry property in the foothills, it's probably going to be March. Okay, and I always remember that, because when I'm out riding on ranges, without any leaf material in the oaks, I can see cows for miles, right? But as soon as the leaves grow back in, you're back down to having to get off a horse and look underneath the tree canopy and all that stuff. So it's a lot harder to find animals. So those are just some tips and tricks that that I've picked up as far as the phenology of plants, is when they come back into the vegetative stage and stuff. And so our shrubs are not going to necessarily flower. Some of them do. Like sagebrush will flower. They get a pretty flower. Is anybody allergic to sagebrush? A little bit. I don't know, man. Nothing smells better than rain on sagebrush, I'm telling you. All right, and so then we're going to see kind of vegetative growth through late spring, early summer. They're going to drop their seeds and then go dormant again in the winter. Okay, and they're going to cycle like this for years. Like there's sagebrush in Wyoming big sage, that is alive for like 20 plus years. One big shrub. So, back to our big question, as far as when do shrubs offer the most forage value for the grazing animal? And keep in mind, it's not just cows, right? It's sheep, it's wildlife species, etc. When is that going to be in this cycle? What months?
Would it be like June and July?
Yeah. I'm going to say even June, July, and August. Cool. All right. So now that we've got our life cycle kind of figured out, and we've got that conundrum with the perennial grasses, you guys can now start to ask yourself some questions about this grazing management plan. When should you write the plan to have cows on the property? Okay, so rather than staring awkwardly at you, let me stop sharing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick you guys back into breakout rooms, and I want you to talk about that. Okay, so if you are designing this grazing management plan, when are you going to recommend is your on date? When is your off date? Okay, based on that, and come up with your reasoning as to why. All that stuff needs to go in the management plan. Okay, I'm going to give you guys 20 minutes to do this. If you make those decisions, okay, you can then start to take the conversation a little bit deeper as to which specific species within each type you would actually see in this Daughtry Hill property. So what species of grasses are you going to see? What species of grass-like species are you going to see? What species of shrubs and forbs are you going to see? And there is one resource in the grazing management plan folder. It's at the very bottom. It's a field guide for grasses. That will get you started. Okay. The Mediterranean climate publications from Mel George, and then the two that you guys are reviewing this week, those are going to help. Okay. Especially with forbs and shrubs. All right. So 20 minutes, those are your two goals. Do you want me to put it back in the chat while I'm here?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, so task number 3 is for you guys to discuss when the grazing season would be for the DMU, so on and off dates, based on that information that we just talked about. And before you guys go to breakout rooms, I'm going to bring the PowerPoint slide back up in case if you want to grab a screenshot or a picture of it, so you kind of have a reference. Okay, and then take the conversation deeper if you have time left about which species of within each plant type would occur on this property. And so you're going to need to list out what those species are by their common name and their scientific name. Okay, so you're going to have to go find that information. All right, so let me share my screen really quickly. Get that out of there. I'll leave this up for a minute. All right, is everybody good? Can I stop sharing and kick you to breakout rooms? Just give me a thumbs up, please.
You're fine.
Okay. All righty. here we go. All right, rooms are open, guys.
I think we had May through August.
Okay, May through August. All right, 2 more rooms, guys. Okay, so Diana is saying late winter to spring. Diana, do you want to put some months on that?
We said around January to May.
January to May. Okay. Cool. All right. And then was there one more room? I think there was one more room.
We said like May to like September-ish.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, this is it's a good start. We have a lot, I have a lot to teach you. How about that? Okay, which is good. This is why I did this. So you guys are all partially right and partially wrong. How about that? Okay. So this is why we're starting these discussions now, because there's a lot to consider, right? So there's not just the fact that we can't tell cows or sheep or whatever type of livestock species we're gonna allow to graze. Hey, buddy, you have to graze annual grasses only, right? They very much are going to graze what they like. And so we are gonna, when we get into the animal science side of stuff and the grazing management, we're going to talk and read a lot of literature about animal preference. And so what will they eat first? Why do they eat it? And how do they eat it? And so this is a good start to the discussion. And now I know where I need to teach a little bit more, which was the whole goal for me. So, okay, cool. So what did you guys get a chance to start on species? So just if you guys did, maybe just throw out like one from each room, an annual grass, cool season annual grass species that you think would grow in this area.
Annual bluegrass. Purple needle grass, I believe, and I'm not sure how to say it. I have it copied. I'll put it in the chat, but I don't know how to say it.
So Mike, real quick though, annual grasses, not perennials, okay?
Oh, you're right. Yes. Let me double.
Okay, annual grasses.
We said annual ryegrass.
Annual rye, absolutely. Okay.
The wild oats.
Wild
We had
oats.
oats.
Okay, great.
Medusa head.
Medusa head. Yep, it will grow. We just got to get rid of it. Okay, how about 2 more? One from each of those last 2 rooms. All right, 2 more from anybody.
Slender oats.
Yeah, slender oats.
How about ryegrass?
And what, Hunter?
Ryegrass.
Yeah, we grabbed that one. So, but there's a couple different varieties. So we'll go big rye. Cool, thank you. Okay, what about perennial grasses? What are some perennials that you would expect to see in this area?
Foxtail.
So foxtail is actually an annual.
Oh.
Yeah, foxtail
Okay.
barley. It's a It's related to regular barley, actually. So it's, I mean, we cuss it because it gets in everything, right? When it's dry, like dogs' feet and down dogs' noses. But it's a great feed, and it's an annual grass.
Okay, because that sheet you provided on under the folder of the GMP,
Yeah.
it says like a whole bunch of sheets. That's the one I'm looking at. It says perennial.
Oh. Okay. I'll have to look at it. Maybe there's a subspecies that I'm just not familiar with. So I'll look it back up. But thank you. Yeah. Normally it would be an annual, but maybe, yeah, I'll look at it back up. Thank you. Other perennials.
Deer grass.
Deer grass, yep. Okay.
And that purple needle one, correct? I was correct.
Purple needle grass. All right, how about one more?
Slender wheatgrass.
Oh, does it come as a perennial too?
Oh. Let me read. I could be wrong.
What about Julie? Do you see like harding grass or anything on that list?
No.
Okay. We'll add harding grass. Harding grass. It's pretty prevalent over there. I've done some research with it. Okay, cool. What about forbs? There's three forbs. Nobody got that far? Is that what you're telling me with the silence?
Would the rose clover be there?
Yep, rose clover would definitely be there. How about two more?
Burr clover.
Yep. Burr clover. One more.
Narrow leaf plantain.
Yeah, plantain would be there for sure. Cool. All right, and then what about shrubs?
How about manzanita?
Manzanita will definitely be there. I think. I may be wrong on that one. It might be too dry on the east side. We do see it on the west side though. I'll look that one back up, Hunter. Okay. Others? How about two more? Also keep in mind that shrubs are also like small trees, okay?
Oak?
Yeah, thank you. Since we're in oak woodlands, I was really hoping somebody was gonna say oak. Awesome. Okay, one more. What about you hunters out there? What do deer and antelope like to eat? Not antelope in this country, but deer.
Not relevant, but there is a herd of antelope in Willows.
In Willows?
Yeah, they got like transplanted there, and
Yeah,
there's like
in Willows, right there off the
off the refuge.
I don't know. Sometimes you can see them in the rice fields.
In that area, yeah.
If I was a rice farmer, I'd be pissed because you know the government did that. Okay. So the one that I'm thinking of that's probably pretty prevalent is buckbrush or antelope bitterbrush as well. So, and that is going to be a key shrub for the wildlife species that are going to be there. So, all right. Well, we got to start. So I am really happy with the progress you guys made today. So this really chunked out a big section of that grazing management plan. So now all you have to do is just get it into a readable format, right? So that's easier, way easier said than done. I'm totally being facetious, but we're gonna keep talking about grasses, but I wanted you guys to have some context of the different types of plants that were on rangeland, the different species within those types, and their phenological cycle, because that is all going to go into how we manage this piece of property. So any last minute questions on today's material?
Yeah, can you tell us exactly when the best grazing time is? Because we had like a lot of input there, but
do I want to do that? Do I want to teach that?
I think you should tell us.
Why not both? That's the key.
I love that you guys think this class is a democracy and not a dictatorship. So in this area, we're going to actually see grazing happen probably from, if we get good rain in the fall, from like November or December, and probably an off date of May 15th or June 1st. Okay, so winter and spring grazing. And then because everything is pretty much dormant, with the exception of the perennial grasses, which we want to protect, spring or summer and fall tend to be the non-grazing time. Okay, so are you happy? You wore me down.
Okay, wait, you said November through December and then
so November, December through May 15th or so.
Okay.
Yep. That the on date, guys, very much has to do with how much fall rain we get. Okay. So here's the cool part about annual grasses. Yeah, they suck. They don't live very long. They seed out, everything else, but they will germinate with only a ½ inch of rain. So as long as you have low temperatures and a ½ inch of rain in the fall, you'll get germination. So that's what we're praying for right now, is we need rain bad. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but we need rain and we need the temperatures to fall to start that fall grass growth so we can ship cows. And stop feeding them hay if you're a cow at the Diatleys. So, all right, cool. So if you guys do have questions, you can feel free to send them to me or ask the next time that we do lab. Just a couple of quick announcements. Please don't forget that the question sheet for the 2 peer-reviewed articles is due this Friday by 5 p.m. You can type it up as a Word document, whatever you do. Just save it as a PDF and upload it that way so that things don't get wonky. And then next week, you are probably not going to see too much new material. You may see, I'm trying to work through this right now because my life is kind of in chaos. You will probably see 1 to 2 peer-reviewed journal articles about invasive species, okay, and a question set that goes with them as well. And we are not going to have lab next week, okay? So no lab, take it off, do something that you want to do, or get ahead on your grazing management plan, work on it. So, you know, keep in mind that if you haven't done your Google Earth maps, you definitely need those. You need your soil, all your soil information. Feel free to go back and watch that recording if you need to know what that information entails. And then also you can start to pull together all this vegetation stuff that we went over today. Okay, so soils and vegetation plus invasive species need to be on the next spot check, which will be October 30th. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Questions? Julie, question?
Thank you.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys. I hope you learned something. Feel free to jump off. Yeah, and we will talk to you later.
Bye, Professor.
Bye. Hey, Katie, did you have a question?